to the Chrissy B Show. Now, work makes up a huge part of our life. For some, it's just a means to pay the bills, and for others, it can even define who they are. So when someone is made redundant or is unemployed, it can lead to all sorts of negative issues. So we'll be delving into the subject of what you can do to keep positive, even if you are unemployed or have been made redundant. My guests today are Manos Koutsis, who will talk about the experience with redundancy that he had, and also HR Associate Maria Asemah is back, and she'll be explaining your rights as an employee. And I'll also be later on giving my own tips on how to keep positive if you have been made redundant. But first of all, let's go to this video showing the effects of redundancy.
Redundancy can be a terrible shock, and as such, people tend to become very miserable, very low. They can become quite anxious, quite short-tempered, argumentative, difficult, all the sort of emotions that you'd expect. And they're all reasonable, appropriate emotions when something really terrible happens. Anger, stress, anxiety, real concerns about money, and you know, ultimately social loss in a way, because you're leaving something that you know you've made a strong social bond with. Redundancy certainly can make people feel as though they've lost their self-esteem, lost their worth, their sense of society, their sense in society, their responsibility, and that's almost separate from all the physical bits that go with it: losing the money, having something meaningful to get up to do in the morning. That turned into sort of total lack of confidence and sort of lack of self-esteem. The whole thing about why me, why not somebody else, what did I do wrong, sort of self-blame. And then for me, that rapidly sort of turned into almost agoraphobia. And I actually found that within about 4 weeks, I was struggling to talk to people on the phone or even sort of leave the house. So it's quite a devastating impact quite quickly. I think the important thing to realise is that there are ways that you can help yourself. That this isn't a feeling that's going to be with you for the rest of your life. That it isn't a feeling that's going to stop you from doing anything else. It's a feeling that goes away. I did find it hard when I was initially made redundant that there wasn't a purpose to every day, and suddenly not to have to get out of bed in the morning. Whilst, you know, if it had been a weekend it would have been fantastic, but suddenly during the week it was just the worst thing in the world. It's not helpful to stay in your pyjamas and dressing gown all day watching daytime TV. It's helpful to get up at a regular time each morning, to get dressed, make yourself look respectable, so that you are feeling as though you have some worth to yourself. I found it quite helpful to sort of go back to the gym and start doing some exercise and taking fresh air and going for walks and things, and all that I think really helps put me in a more sort of positive mindset. There are books that you can borrow from the library, Understanding Depression, Understanding Anxiety. There are a range of books which take you through a set of exercises that we know are effective in helping you to look after your own mental welfare. If the symptoms and the feelings that you get are more disabling, more distressing for you, you might want to go and talk to your GP as a first stop, because there are some psychological interventions that would be helpful, and for some people, medication. I think advice I would give others would be very much around treat yourself well and get yourself to a happier position first of all, because you know you'll start to feel happier and more confident, and that's an excellent starting point. The important thing to remember is that these changes are reversible, so that people do get better. When they get a job, these things do turn around and they feel better in themselves.
Alrighty, so we had some great advice then. Now it's time to meet my first guest, which is Manos Koutsis. Hello, Manos.
Hello, Chrissy. Pleased to meet you.
So good to have you on the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here.
So you've got quite a story, haven't you? Because you've obviously been through redundancy, which is why you're here today to talk about it.
That's right.
Went through a very rough patch,
yeah,
but then came out on top again. But
That's
first
right.
of all, tell us a bit about your background. Where are you from?
Well, okay, I'm a Greek Canadian, so two countries for me. My parents are Greek. They moved over to Canada in the 80s, and then I was born there.
Okay.
In 1998, we moved to Greece. I finished my schooling there for 5 years, and then in 2004, I came over to England, studied drama.
Which is your passion?
It's my passion, yeah, I'm an actor. And then, you know, I started doing plays, and obviously when you're an actor, you've got to do a lot of, you've got to do a lot of jobs. Acting means, give me a job, what can I do? I worked in restaurants, cafes, and it was quite a stressful job for me. And sometimes, like working in the restaurant, you just have to be on the ball all the time. It gets really stressful.
Yeah.
And I said to myself one time, I want to work in a library or a museum. You know, that's...
Why?
Well, because it's more peaceful there.
Okay,
You know, you don't have to be running around all the
Yeah.
time. And then luckily I met someone who worked in a museum, the Natural History Museum. And I said, I'd love to work in a museum, you know, be around all the history and the arts and everything and the science. And she kind of helped me go about applying for the job. And then a few months later, there was an opening. And I got a part-time job, and then it became full-time, and I worked there for 5 years.
Okay. Now, did you love your job working there?
I did, yeah.
What was so good about it?
Many things. First of all, the building is amazing. It's for me, it's one of the best museums in London, if not the world. The historic value of it, of just being in that space, in a Victorian building that's, you know, so amazing, has so much to offer. In terms of science, what they do. Also, it's a real people person's job.
Which you are, I've noticed.
Yeah.
It's very chatty, very talkative, very nice person.
That's me, yeah. Sometimes a bit too much, but you know. And so I just loved it. And then the more I was working there, the more I learned about what was going on, what they were doing, the contributions they were making. And that passion that they had sort of became my passion, and I put that through in my work.
Okay. So what were you actually doing there yourself?
Okay, so my role was visit planner. We offered kind of a tailor-made visit for visitors.
Okay.
So we would take a proactive approach. So people would come in and we'd go up to them and say, you know, hi, how you doing? What do you want to see today? Let me tell you about this.
Yeah.
Sometimes we would do tours. We did tours for people with disabilities, for VIPs, and just took them around the museum, showed them what they wanted to see, told them some of the stories about the specimens. And we also, a big part of our job was promoting events that happened in the museum in the Attenborough studio, which opened in 2009. And every day they'd have a live talk with a scientist, and it's a free show. Of course, our role was to go around the museum telling everybody, you know, we've got a show going on.
Yeah.
And this was my favorite part of the job, because if you've been to the Natural History Museum, it's a huge building, and as an actor, it's a great joy to be able to use my voice in such a space. You know, I'm quite a theatrical person. So imagine...
So even speaking about it, your face is just like,
yeah,
it's lit up.
I'm telling you, I loved it.
Yeah,
it was,
yeah.
And because it was just so much fun, you know. It was a kind of job where I was like, I really felt blessed that I was working there, you know.
So you'd wake up every day not dreading going to work, basically, because there are people that wake up and they think, oh no, I've got to go to work today. You never felt that way, did you?
No, only if I only had about an hour's sleep the night before, but in general, I loved it. And
so you're getting paid to do something that you loved?
Yeah, exactly. The job, it's a kind of job as well where you can put your personality into it, you know, because it's kind of what you make it to be. And as I was saying, like, so I'd go in the galleries and on the top of my lungs start saying, ladies and gentlemen, we've got a great show for you today. And then everybody, like hundreds of people in the whale hall of the museum would turn, and then they listen to what I say. And sometimes I'd have fun with it, and I'd, you know, do different characters, or, you know, say little
I can see you doing that.
Yeah. And I mean, not to show off or anything, but I was like one of the best at getting they called me the Pied Piper sort of thing, because
you'd get people
following
you.
Yeah, and they'd want to see it. And I'll tell you a funny thing that happened one time. Some two people, they weren't happy with the show, and at the end they complained and they said, this American guy said it was going to be great. You know, and it was, but not for them. You know.
Oh. So you'd never, in your wildest dreams, thought that something would go wrong there, did you? You really kind of thought, this is it for me. I love my job. I'm getting paid to do something that I love. And you weren't even thinking that one day you'd just be told you wouldn't be working there anymore.
No, I didn't. I mean, I think I kind of feared it, but in general, like sometimes I worry a lot about, you know, we always worry about, oh, this might never last or so on and so forth. But I never really thought that they, you know, they would say, sorry, but the role is no more. And so it was a real shock when we found out about that.
All right, you're going to tell us about that in just a moment, Manos, because we're going to go to a quick break.
Okay.
Then afterwards, you can tell us what happened and actually the downward spiral you went into afterwards, right? Okay, so do join us after this break.
Don't forget to subscribe to the Chrissy B Show, always aiming to show you the happier side of life. You can find us on YouTube, Facebook and Twitter.
Welcome back to today's program where we are speaking all about how to deal with redundancy. So we've got Manos here, my guest for today, and he's been telling us about his wonderful job at the Natural History Museum that you absolutely loved because he was able to put his own personality into the job and he absolutely loved it. Didn't actually think one day that it would come to an end.
No.
Not voluntarily anyway.
Yeah.
Forcefully.
Yeah.
So
I
what
thought
happened?
maybe I would just move on.
Yeah, like you would naturally move on, go on to something else, follow your dreams, but you didn't expect for someone to tell you bye-bye.
Yeah, no, it was a real big shock.
So what happened?
Okay, so I mean, you know, it's public sector. Every year there are redundancies. We saw lots of people over the years I've been there been made redundant and everything. Of course, as I said, never thought that it would happen with our team because, for one, you know, we didn't think that we were that significant really in the grander scheme of things. And because we felt that we played quite a vital role as well and all that. And anyways, so they called us, they said that the head of our department wanted to have a meeting with us. And so...
How many of you was it?
Basically, there were about 9 or 12 of us, I think, on the team that were permanent. And then we had some agency as well. So they called us, the permanent staff, into the meeting, and there were changes going on in the museum. We knew already because it had come under new management. And we had meetings before about how everything's going to change and we're going to move forward. So we just thought it was just going to be, they were going to tell us something new about our role or how our role might be changing and how we're going to fit into that. And then all of a sudden we started hearing the words, basically they started saying that how the decision started to come about. So we started listening, going like, we didn't yet hear the answer, but then we started to feel like, okay, this is interesting, where's this going? And then finally, so they said how all the things trickled through the departments and how the decision came about. And then she said it is with a heavy heart that the visit planner team will be no more. And then we were all just shocked. And I felt like, I didn't feel it was real. I was like, this is a dream, this can't be happening. It's really hard to explain the feeling. It was, even though it felt so unreal, it was really real. Yeah. And we didn't want it to be true, and we were all looking at each other. Some of us started crying. I mean, I felt really affected by it. And then we were all just kind of looking at each other. It really was like the same kind of feeling at a funeral.
It's a loss, isn't it? Something that's important to you.
It is, definitely. And it just comes unexpected, just like that.
So did you leave from that day, or
did
they give you some notice?
They gave us notice.
Okay.
I must say everything was done to the best that it could be done, and they tried as much to help us move on. So basically that was saying that we would have another 2-3 months, and the decision would be final, and then that would be it.
Yeah, okay.
They told us that day that we could leave early, obviously because it was a lot to take on, and that there will be more information and more support for us throughout. And we just went downstairs, and we were kind of, our whole team, you know,
because it's like a family as well, wasn't it?
It is, yeah.
You're all together, you're all doing the same sort of job, and then
and even
you're
more,
losing a family as well.
Exactly, even more than other workplaces. I'm still really good friends with, you know, lots of people from the team, Flavia, Felicity, Philippa, you know, we've remained close friends. This kind of did actually strengthen our friendship as well.
Yeah.
And we just, you know, we were down and we were hugging each other, and we were saying, you know, I can't believe it's over after all that, you know. Okay. But
you can take a sip, go on.
Oh yeah, sorry.
Poor thing, you want to take a sip, well, you haven't stopped talking, have you?
No, sorry. Good. Yeah.
All right, no, I'm joking. Yeah, so all right, so obviously you lost your job then. After they gave you this notice, what did you do with yourself? Did you start looking for a job immediately? Did you stay home for a while? What did you do?
I think I was in denial for a while. I kind of looked at other jobs. Now there were some internal jobs at the museum, so I kind of did put myself forward for some of those. But to be honest, I didn't really have, I was still shocked by everything, and and anyways, I don't think I was appropriate for those other roles as well. So, and I was really just grieving that I can't believe it's over. What am I gonna do now? Kind of thinking the worst. And I started, because at least I had the luxury of time, because obviously I was still gonna be working for 2-3 months. And then because I had been working there for 5 years, I had accumulated a lump sum of money, which could keep me going for a while.
For a little while. But then eventually you did have to move house, didn't you?
Yeah. So when I stopped working at the museum, I took 2 months off because I was still getting paid. I still had 2 months paid leave. And then it was over. And at that point, I started experimenting with other work, and I started doing telephone sales at a call center where they employ lots of actors, and we were selling wine, and it had its moments, but I wasn't really that good at it.
Were you missing your old job?
Yeah, and that was just making me say, wow, I can't believe it's over. I had the best job, and I'm here, so I couldn't really commit to that.
So it's a different case when you don't actually like the job, because some people are in jobs that they really hate, and when they're made redundant, for them it's like, oh great, it's an opportunity, you know, maybe this is a blessing in disguise, let me try something else, something that I love. And maybe they were too scared to leave themselves and start something. But when it's a job that you love, it's just a whole different ballgame, isn't it?
I was always aware of how lucky I was to have this job, and I enjoyed it to the full. Which is why it might have hurt even more when, you know, that I lost it. And I still, you know, wish I had it. So I had to move house because I started realizing that, okay, realistically, I'm not going to be making as much money as I was before. So I'm going to have to move somewhere more affordable. And so where I found something that was in my budget, because I have other expenses as well. Like I have to pay for, you know, acting classes, and these kind of things. And I was really depressed in the new place. It was just really small, you know, and just looking at the four corners going like, how did I end up here? I kind of felt like, you know, like Cinderella in the scrubbing the floors, you know what I mean? It was a funny analogy, but it does make you start thinking of these things. Because then it put me in that state.
Could you feel yourself sort of feeling lower and lower? Were you aware of that sinking that you were facing?
Yes, I just felt really discouraged. It was a real knock to my confidence. I felt hopeless. My whole body felt like really, it's hard to explain, but really stressed and panicked. I felt a lot of panic. And then when I would try and apply for jobs or look for jobs, I would just start twitching and going like, there's no point, you know, I don't, you know, nothing would seem quite right.
Yeah. How did you pull yourself out of that? Because that was quite a serious state to be in.
Yeah.
And dangerous.
Yeah.
If you didn't get help.
I had to really dialogue with myself, and I had to say, you know, I've got to pick myself up, and I feel terrible, but it doesn't matter what I feel. It's what I do now that matters. And I have to keep sustaining, you know, my lifestyle, or, you know, to the best that I can.
Yeah.
And I said, no matter how terrible I feel, I've just got to get myself out in the world and do. And I found that the more I did that, the more I started to really discover myself again, a new part of myself.
This is so key, Manos, what you're saying, because, you know, as we were speaking earlier, and it's something that we've talked about on the show, so if you wait to feel like doing something, that probably you will not feel like doing something. That is, you have to do something first, and sometimes a feeling will follow after that, because then you start to pick yourself up, you start to feel more confident, because you're actually, when we start doing something, it already makes us feel better.
Yeah.
But it's just that first step to go out there and actually do something different, or look for something, or do a course or something, not stay at home and keep feeling the way you're feeling.
Yeah.
And that is key. But things did turn around for you, which we're going to speak about after the break, because we need to go to break now.
Okay,
Time
sure.
is
Already?
flying, but I know it's flying by. And we're also going to be joined by HR Associate Maria Asemah, and she's going to be talking about some of the rights that you have as an employee when you are being made redundant, and lots of other interesting stuff too. So do join us after this.
Don't forget to subscribe to the Chrissy B Show, always aiming to show you the happier side of life. You can find us on YouTube, Facebook and Twitter.
Welcome back to today's program. We are speaking about dealing with redundancy and how not to get too stressed. So now we're joined by our expert, Maria Asemah. Hello, Maria.
Hi.
So lovely to have you back.
Thank you.
So you've come back to help our viewers again with another interesting topic, and very relevant, because a lot of people do go through this. And what did you think of Manos' story, first of all, and how things were dealt with at his workplace?
Yeah, I think his story was quite sad in that, again, he really enjoyed his role. He had a family in his work colleagues. It's unfortunate, but it's a sign of the times. And, you know, with an economic downturn, there are casualties. People do lose their roles. They do have to move on to other things. But it sounds like he was treated fairly. Management probably didn't have any alternative but to make the redundancies. And it seems like things were handled in an appropriate way. He was offered support. You know, they were given the opportunity to go home early to kind of take on board the heavy news that they were given. So it seems like things were handled as best as they could be.
Now, unfortunately, it's not always the case, and there are companies that don't deal with things properly, and sometimes employees don't know their rights. So can you tell us about that? What are the employees' rights when something like this happens?
Yeah, absolutely. So employees are typically entitled to receive redundancy payout. I say typically because it does depend on the circumstances. So for instance, employees with less than 2 years of continuous employment in that particular company are not entitled to receive the statutory redundancy payout and the notice period that would go with that. So if they were effectively made redundant from their role, anyone with less than 2 years of work in this role, they wouldn't be entitled to a redundancy payout.
Wow.
For those people with more than 2 years of continuous employment, they are entitled to a redundancy payout, which would take into consideration their age, how long they've been working there, length of service, and also their gross weekly pay. and that's on top of any notice period that they were either paid for or entitled to work whilst they're looking for alternative employment.
Okay. Is there anything, do you have any useful tips for viewers if, you know, they are going through that process now, what they could do?
A good employer should be able to offer support. So that can take the form of what's known as outplacement services, and that would be an external organisation that's been appointed to assist with counselling, assist with helping them to find an alternative role, things such as preparing their CVs, preparing for interviews. If someone
They do all that, really?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's good.
Some organisations do pay for outplacement services. For someone who's been in a role for a lengthy period of time, they might not have an up-to-date CV. They might not feel confident going back into an employment market that they no longer recognise. So, and a good employer would offer those services.
Okay. Now, I did have a question here because some people may not sort of realise the difference between redundancy and basically getting fired. And that makes them feel worse because maybe they think they didn't like me and why is it? Or maybe even if they do understand the difference, maybe why have I been chosen and not the other person? Because it does knock your confidence, especially if there's other people that are staying. What would you say about that?
So there's a key difference between a redundancy and a dismissal on the grounds of an employee not performing their role as they should be. So redundancy only actually occurs when there's 3 grounds for a redundancy situation. The business is closing, the place of work is closing its operations, or there's a reduction in the work of the workforce. So that means that they need to reduce the workforce. So that's the only times that you actually find a redundancy situation. So sometimes people actually refer to themselves being redundant, but actually it's the position that's being made redundant.
Okay.
A dismissal on the grounds of an employee will be down to a number of reasons such as consistent lateness, absence-related problems, performance-related issues. Anything to do with how the employee is performing their role would constitute someone being fired.
Okay. Now, in terms of sort of looking for other work, do you think that maybe people that have been made redundant are maybe frowned upon, or they have that kind of fear like, oh, I've been made redundant, I don't really want to talk about it, and they would avoid telling like a new employer, do you think?
No, I think just the opposite. I think employers are very understanding to the fact that during such turmoil in the economy, there's widespread economy across all, redundancy across all different sectors.
Yeah.
So a lot of people have been affected in the hospitality industry, in the corporate world. So it's something that an employer will instantly recognise as a reason for someone leaving their role. So there's absolutely no stigma attached to someone, saying I left my role because I was made redundant.
Okay, that's good to know. Some people might even be scared about talking about that.
Yeah.
Which is really good. Okay, so Manos here, now he has managed to turn things around. Can you tell the viewers before we go?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I was comfortable in the museum, and because I'm an actor as well, it's an uncertain profession. And life is, to a large degree, you never know what's going to happen. I had a permanent job, but guess what? It wasn't permanent.
Yeah.
Nothing is. And now I'm working with 3-4 different agencies. And although I'm not making as much money and I don't have that comfort, I feel more pushed, but in a good way. I feel more on my feet, like, oh, I've got to find some work. Yeah, booking some jobs, good, got those jobs, and now I can do this and do that, and it's exciting. I mean, obviously it's got its downsides, working with agencies and all this, but that's another issue. But the fact is it did wake me up and it said that I have to get out there and I have to make things happen for myself. It's that is a reality. I can't dwell on that. I've got to get up and take this setback and see how do I move on and what's my present and my future going to be.
And you're also working with kids now as well?
Yeah, I work, one of my jobs is I work as a teaching assistant in schools, which is great fun.
That must be fun because your personality will obviously come out in that.
I love it, yeah. I mean, I prefer working more with the teenagers because, you know, they're older and they're more funny and reminds me of myself when I was in high school. But the kids as well, it's great being in that environment. And I feel, I've got a lot to offer there and I enjoy working there.
Well, what advice would you give then to someone that's feeling really down in the dumps at the moment because they have been made redundant?
I would say that it's understandable that you feel that way, and that's how you will feel, but don't let that feeling determine your future. Is that, yes, accept it and grieve it, but don't wait to feel better to move on.
Yeah.
You have to really just push yourself and say, today I'm going to get out of bed, I'm going to get out in that world, and I'm going to do something. And then things will start happening. And you'll start to, it'll be a different thing, you know?
Definitely.
As Shakespeare said, parting is such sweet sorrow, because every end has a wonderful new beginning.
Yeah, it's so true. Maria, any final words before we go? Any advice for
I think that summed it up. That I don't have any Shakespearean words to
or something.
Fantastic.
All right, Manos, thank you so much for sharing your story and all the best with your acting and everything that you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It was really great.
And Maria, I'm sure we're going to see you again, but thanks so much for the advice again that you've given to our viewers. Brilliant. Yeah. All right, guys, so don't go away because after the break, I'll be giving you my tips to help you if you have been made redundant or are unemployed, so don't go away.
Don't forget to subscribe to the Chrissy B Show, always aiming to show you the happier side of life. You can find us on YouTube, Facebook and Twitter.
Welcome back. So I'll be giving you my tips on how to cope after redundancy in just a moment. But first of all, we do have a video from Hannah Richards. So as you know, it's very, very important to make sure that you eat healthily, especially in stressful times, because if you're eating junk food and not looking after your health, it does actually make your mood a lot lower. So in order to, to keep you more positive and to keep your mind more positive, you need to make sure that you eat healthy food. So let's take a look at this from Hannah Richards.
Hello and welcome to the MTS Kitchen. My name's Hannah and today we're going to make some breakfast peppers. So, first of all, you can take any peppers, green, red, yellow, orange. The sweetest ones are the orange ones, I think. So we're going to use them. And I've just cut them in half, cored them out and put a bit of olive oil on them. So I'm just going to put them into the oven, just to soften them up a little bit. Okay, and so to make the middle, to stuff the peppers, we're going to do a scrambled egg mix. So I've got my red onion. So just dice the red onion up into the smallest pieces you can manage. Just going to put half a red onion into the bowl. Then I'm going to take a tomato for some colour. So breakfast is all about making sure you get in all your good healthy fats, your good fibrous vegetables, and a bit of protein as well. And then just for a little bit of spice, we're going to add some chili. There we go. So, all the ingredients are in here now. I'm going to do a couple of pinches of sea salt and some black pepper. There we go. And then I'm going to crack 2 eggs into the mixture. So now I'm going to take the peppers out of the oven. They've just been in there warming up for about 5 minutes, about 180 degrees. So we're just going to pull them out now. So we're just going to put them there. Do be careful because they'll be hot. And then just very carefully start spooning in the mixture. So it's been about 20 minutes. I'm going to pull the peppers out of the oven now. Garnish it with a bit of coriander and a bit of black pepper. Bon appetit. Stuffed peppers.
Thanks very much to Hannah Richards. So let's go through a few pointers on what you can do if you have faced redundancy or unemployment. So the number one is to understand that in the case of redundancy, it's not your fault. So it can be a very distressing time because you worry about your finances, and it can also knock your confidence. And a lot of people end up depressed because of being made redundant, and feeling this way can even make you more susceptible to other mental health issues, but can also it can hinder you basically from finding another job. So the first thing is to accept that it's not your fault. It's just something that happened. It's a company thing. It's not about you. It's about that company having to downsize for whatever reason. So you are just a casualty of what's happened. So though accepting it wasn't your fault isn't going to find you a job straight away, at least it will minimize it from affecting your self-esteem too much. And number two is to fill up your time. So make sure that your day, even though you're now maybe at home, make sure your day has some kind of structure. Don't sit around doing nothing, but again, don't fill up your whole time looking for work, because that's also going to be very tiring for you. So you should include other things in your day. So yes, by all means, look for other work, but also look after your health, your fitness, spend time with family and friends, do some hobbies. So include activities that you also look forward to rather than focusing on what you've supposedly lost. So do other things as well. Number three is to keep an eye on your spending. So, you're not earning maybe what you were earning before. Of course, unless your redundancy settlement was really good, you can kind of afford to carry on living as you were living before. But if not, you need to start restricting your outgoings and making some clever changes here and there so that the money doesn't become an extra stress too. So a bit of budgeting would be really good. And number four, ask around. So even if you're considering changing career, maybe still contact the people that you know from your previous job just to keep an eye out for things, and maybe they can help you in some way. So some of them might not even be aware that you've been made redundant, so they can keep their eyes open, their ears open, and if something does come up, then they can tell you about it. If you don't feel comfortable telling people from your previous workplace, at least confide in friends and family, and they can also keep their eyes open. And number five is not to forget to have fun. So obviously, like I said before, don't spend loads of money in case you are having to budget and things like that. But now you have more free time on your hands, so make the most of it. So go out and do fun things maybe that don't cost very much or that are completely free, like going to museums or going for walks in the park. Just start doing things for you. Maybe when you were working you didn't have much time for yourself, but now invest some time in yourself now that you have the opportunity. And number six, you can also see more opportunities. So take this time to maybe think about your future. Maybe that job that you were doing wasn't one that you really wanted to do. It wasn't like your dream job, or it wasn't something that you saw yourself doing maybe when you were thinking about stuff that you wanted to do when you were younger. So it's an opportunity now to sit down and really have a good think. What do I want to do with my life? Do I want to go back into the same sort of work? Do I want to look for something completely new? Is there something that I've always wanted to do that I've never ever had the opportunity to do? So now's your chance. You can start looking for your dream job, and maybe you've always wanted to have your own business. So this is also an opportunity. You can start planning something, getting some advice. So don't see this situation, though it's very hard and it's not easy, an easy situation to go through when you have been made redundant, but see this in a positive way. There's no point in seeing all the doom and gloom that's going to make you feel worse. See it as an opportunity for you to do something you've always wanted to do, or to spend time doing other things, and enjoy this time. I know it sounds like a weird thing to say, but that you can find good in every bad situation. So I hope that's helped you today, guys. And if you have any comments for me or you want any more information, you can visit the website chrissybshow.tv, and there's a form on there if you'd like to get in touch. And also don't forget, you can also visit my personal website, which is mylifeafterdepression.com, and you'll find all information about me there, how I got help for the depression that I went through and turned my life around too. We'll see you again next time. Bye bye for now.